Hi everyone, I'm here with Mike. And Mike, would you like to just introduce yourself and just say what you do at the university?
Sure, thank you very much. My name is Dr. Mike Newell. I am the course leader for the Health, Nutrition and Exercise program that we run here at the University of Bedfordshire. I sit in the School of Sports Science and Physical Activity, and I sit in the Institute of Sport Science and Physical Activity Research, which is our ISPAR Research Institute.
Brilliant. And in sports science, what courses do we have on offer to students?
Yeah, there's a variety of different programs that we have at the School of Sports Science and Physical Activity, all the way through your sort of traditional sport and exercise science route, where you would learn things around sort of the physiology of physical activity through to the physiological demands of sport, the biomechanical considerations of that, and even some of the psychological aspects of that. All the way through to programs such as sport and physical education, where you think about a little bit more about the pedagogy. So, how do you teach sport and physical activity to different cohorts of students, whether that's primary age students or whether that's secondary age students. We also have the health, nutrition and exercise program, which is the one that I run, where we focus a little bit more around things like metabolic conditions, metabolic health, particularly in relation to metabolic diseases and nutritional intake, and also physical activity. Across all of our different programs, we consider things like behavior change. So how can we use psychological tools in order to enact a particular intervention that we may want to do? We also have our football studies and football management programs as well. And yeah, we also have, a new addition to our school would be the sports rehabilitation team and the sports therapy team as well, where they look at injury and injury prevention, and then also recovery and treatment from those different injuries as well, alongside different clinical conditions that you can help to manage with different physical therapies. So there's a whole range of different programs that are hosted within the school itself.
Brilliant. And within all those programs and all those courses, what are the staff's background, what are the academics backgrounds that they can bring to the students so that the students can really push forward with their studies?
Yeah, great question. I'm one of the newer members of staff in the department, so I will do my best to represent my colleagues as best as possible. So we have a lot of academics that obviously have that traditional academic background. So will have undertaken a undergraduate degree, moved on to a master's, completed a PhD, and then taught across a range of different institutions within the UK. I myself came from a PhD at the University of Stirling. I then went to work for the Medical Research Council, where I was a research manager. And then I taught at the University of Westminster as a lecturer before I then became a senior lecturer within the University of Bedfordshire. And I do believe there's quite a number of staff who would follow that similar type of background. A prominent member of staff within our department would be Professor Angel Charter. She is a professor of behavior change and psychology and heads up a range of different psychological councils, advises various different public health strategies, and also sits on various different boards where behavior change is a very key element of that. So, for example, she was a key contributor to how local councils across the UK would undertake their COVID strategies in terms of getting people to undertake behavior change around the idea of wearing masks or the idea of washing hands, publicly and socially distancing from one another, things like that. So what different public health messaging can take place in order to allow that to happen. We have members of staff like Kevin Wild, who comes from a slightly less traditional academic background. So he used to work within the military and then in the prison services, but now has a really key and active role within our community clinics within the school. So our school kind of prides itself a little bit on the community clinics that we have, where we have members of the local Bedford community coming in to undertake different exercise programs, whether that's our type 2 diabetes or our diabetes prevention program, all the way through to our kind of a cancer rehabilitation and training program, where we have individuals who have been diagnosed with cancer, but they want to increase their quality of life, but also the duration of their lives as well, because we know that exercise plays a really key role in those particular thing. So hopefully that gives you a kind of a whistle-stop tour of some of the members of staff within the department. But if there was anyone more specific that people would like to discuss, I'm more than happy to try and dig something up on them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a very diverse range of stuff, and I'm sure that's brilliant for students because they can see from many different backgrounds as well. But I'm just wondering, what projects and what content will these students have that are joining in September? So what will they be doing?
Yeah, great, excellent question. I could be a bit selfish and talk about my health and exercise program, but we'll kind of try and keep it generic. So, obviously, depending on what course you come onto, should you join the university in September, will then dictate what units that you take. However, there are some really core and key units, that are shared across the school itself. So that allows you to upskill in things like academic writing, or ensuring that you become employable as an individual at the end of your degree program. So we ensure that students are kind of taking a critical look at their CV at this point, trying to get students to identify potential employment opportunities as they move outwards of their degree, so that that's not a big surprise when you get there. So we have academic skills, we have our professional, I can't remember the exact name of the unit, but essentially professional skills and employability, which allows students to develop that kind of key soft set skills, and also making sure that you're presentable to an employer when you get to that point. Some other key units that run throughout the different programs would be things like human physiology. So we make a really good use of our laboratory facilities here. So I'm sat in our laboratory B at the moment. We have A, B, C, and D. I know, very inventive, and I think we could do better on naming those labs, but it makes it pretty simple, to be fair. But in here, we've got things like the treadmill, and we've got our metabolic cart behind us. We've also got some of the Douglas bags just over this shoulder here. And this equipment allows us to get individuals into the laboratory space and then exercise them under different conditions, but always ensuring that they're safe. So the metabolic cart that you can see just behind me here, we can measure individuals' breath samples, so we can look at how much air that they breathe in and out at any given moment, but we can also look at the composition of that air, so we can look at the oxygen content and the CO2 content. And then from those things, we can actually start to deduce, well, how much energy are you expending during that exercise? But also then of that energy, how much of that is fat oxidation and how much of that is carbohydrate oxidation? And then we can start to ask really interesting questions like, well, what happens to that balance when we do fasted state exercise? Or what happens to that balance if we have an obese individual exercising? Or what happens to that different mixture if we give someone a different mixed macronutrient meal that's high in fat or high in protein? So that we can start to understand the physiological responses to that. And that starts right in year one with a unit called human physiology, which spans quite a number of different courses across the school itself. And therefore you get exposed to using all these amazing facilities for asking sort of real world and very tangible questions that will make sense to you, that you'll have a real feel and a visceral feel for exactly how you can apply that into your circumstances, whether that's because you're going to become a personal therapist, or whether you want to work on nutrition, or whether you want to advise individuals about how to eat more healthily, particularly when you're trying to lose weight or even gain weight in terms of lean mass. So there's lots of different things that students will be exposed to throughout that particular throughout their course, where we've got these really nice key units and modules which make use of all of the facilities that we've got. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea for where we're at in terms of different things that students might get exposed to.
Yeah, and I'm sure the facilities are a massive part of the school. I'm just wondering, would you like to just tell us about some of the benefits that gives to the students, being able to have these facilities on hand?
Yeah, absolutely. So, excuse me. So we have a dedicated laboratory building for our sports science laboratories, of which we have some very key exercise physiology labs. Like we'll have the treadmills, and we've got some nice exercise bikes which allow you to really control the exercise bout. Just to my side here, and I'll give you a little turn over if I can get you over there. We have one of our environmental chambers. So in here we can make the environment very hot, and we can get people to either sweat lots or challenge them provide them with a thermal challenge, which is quite relevant, quite topical at the moment, particularly with large sporting events taking place in some very hot and humid climates at the moment. And with these pieces of kit, the fact that we can simulate different environments, the fact that we can do really controlled exercise bouts means that students get a real hands-on experience. And that's my experience of working at Bedfordshire so far, is that the units are always intertwined with lectures that really help to inform a big practical element of the course. So you're not just going to be reading and listening to these things, but you'll actually come in and do those things. So another thing that we pride ourselves on is the ability to be able to do things like blood sampling quite easily within the laboratory setting. So if you've had, say, for example, a high sugar containing meal, we can actually track your glucose concentration over the next 2 hours to actually determine, well, what was your blood glucose reaction to that particular meal? And it's one of the things that you'll do on human physiology in first year across most of the courses that we run, but also on principles of nutrition, which I run in semester 1 for sport and exercise science and for health, nutrition and exercise, whereby we actually challenge the body in these different ways, whether it's during exercise or with a food or a nutritional strategy, and actually have that tangible data to be able to look at those things. Some other excellent facilities that we make use of, we have a specialized environmental chamber that's just across the way over there. And inside there, we have a hydrostatic weighing tank. So when we want to take measures of body compositions of individuals, one of the best ways of doing that is by completely submerging an individual underwater. And then we can use what we call, we use different displacement calculations to be able to determine exactly how much of that water is being displaced by fat mass and how much of that is being displaced by lean mass. So we have a big water tank within our environmental chamber that sits within the ground with some really specialized equipment to allow us to actually undertake those measurements. And we were doing that over this last academic year as well. So it's not, all of this stuff hasn't been put on hold because of the legacy of COVID. We're actively doing these on a day-to-day basis within the different units that we run within the school. So not only having the facilities for researchers and for staff to use, but making those facilities accessible to students to be able to use is a real key element of the School of Sports Science and Physical Activity, and something that we really do pride ourselves on. So that's the main advantage, is that these facilities are available, they're accessible, we make use of them within the units, and students get exposed to them right from day one and week one within some key units within the courses themselves.
Brilliant. And not too long ago, you mentioned about employability, and especially with all of these facilities. How does the employability at the school help with them afterwards? What career paths do the students tend to go into?
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of the whole school. I think if Martin was on one of these, he'd do a much better job. But particularly with graduates from my program, they tend to go off into council-led community initiatives for exercise and nutrition, particularly on that kind of behavior change, or within young people, or within specific areas of the community where they can facilitate different health initiatives or public health initiatives to change behaviors, to lose weight, to become more metabolically healthy. Another key graduate pathway for us is Nuffield Health, who take on a lot of our students as physiologists. They go on and then contribute to that healthcare sector, where they are using their skill set to be able to become more employed in that area. We have other graduates that move on into more specialized nutrition roles, to ensure that they're working with companies so that they're current, so that they're up to date. One of the big selling points of the Health, Nutrition and Exercise program is our AFN accreditation. So that's the Association for Nutritionists, which means that you become an associate member of the AFN once you graduate from the program. That opens a lot of doors in terms of access to nutrition-specific jobs, which is, again, a big selling point for the course, and a consideration for anybody who's thinking about doing a nutrition-related program, to ensure that that AFN stamp is there to allow those things to happen. But our graduates are super successful, and again, pathways into either local government, either private sector, or indeed more specialized sectors in terms of the specialism of your course is the key kind of direction of travel that we want our graduates to go out with, really. So
cool. And just to go back a little bit, before these students leave the university, what links are there to employers, and what links that help boost their employability?
Yeah, it's a great question. So depending on which course that you undertake, you can undertake a professional practice year. I know some of my students come onto the standard program and then they actually do a course change after the first year because they identify that as being a potential opportunity. So you can gain a placement with different employers that we're associated with at the university, to ensure that you can go on and get some of those key employability skills, to ensure that you are differentiating yourself a little bit at the point of graduation. Those placements are quite specific. So it really does depend on what direction you want to go in. And I suppose the answer there is that there isn't really a pool of employers specifically, but there's definitely a unit set up there to facilitate those different placements taking place. So if you identify somewhere that you want to go, you'd get lots of support from the university in order to make that placement happen. And it's quite of a mutually beneficial relationship between the university and the potential employer, that pathway exists. They get an extra set of hands for whatever duration of time that the placement is set for, and then the undergraduate or graduate student gets the opportunity to actually come on and get those professional placement skills. One area that we're trying to develop with is because I used to work with the Medical Research Council, they have their epidemiology unit based in Cambridge, so it's not too far away. It's about maybe a 40-minute drive from here, and that would be an excellent link in order to getting placements in place for specific individuals like that. So yeah, it depends on the individual, depends on which course you're on, but it's a nice opportunity to get that placement boxed off in that placement year, so that you have, again, you're trying to differentiate yourself a little bit and coming into employers saying, well, actually, I've already done this professional placement and this is what I did and this is how successful that was. So that would be the primary route to do that. It's also, I think, just having an academic to sit down and look at your CV and go, so where are you at? And we have our personal tutor program at the university, which allows you to sit down with your personal tutor and have these types of really tangible conversations around, well, where are you at? So, for example, I have a first-year student who's now moving into a second year called Shane, and he's working with me quite closely because he's quite interested in developing his own personal training element of his experience and his kind of employability profile so far. So I've been sharing it with him, various different academics or various different individuals who work within the fitness and health sector who do a really good job of promoting themselves. But he would have never found those unless we'd had a conversation about what his aspirations were. And I would never been able to advise him unless he'd spoken out about it. So now we've got this real nice relationship where I know what he's going towards and I kind of identify things. And I just send him the odd email now and then, say, oh, Shane, have you had a look at this? Or here's a new opportunity, or look at the way that they're portraying this. And those types of relationships that you can develop, particularly at a sort of smaller campus with slightly smaller student numbers, is really advantageous to the individuals who get the access to do that, really. So
great. And do you have any advice for applicants? Because at the moment there might be someone watching this at the moment who's sitting on the fence and they're unsure about whether to come to university, whether to do the course. Do you have any advice for someone that's just unsure about what they're doing?
Absolutely. You might be sitting there thinking, I just don't have the grades, or I didn't get the grade that I wanted in that particular qualification. If you were expecting this particular mark, but you didn't quite get it, you may be surprised to find that there are offerings available. So for individuals who might be applying for the health, nutrition and exercise course, there are some kind of sort of strict entry requirements there, but also, until you have that conversation with an academic, you might not necessarily see value in a particular qualification that you have, whereas we do. And we can map that to different entry requirements, or we can point you in the direction of a course that's very similar or has very similar attributes, but might not necessarily have the exact course title that you're looking for. So I would say to anybody who's not quite sure about where they're at, that the best thing that you can do is simply pick up the phone, have a chat to an academic, gain some advice from the university with regards to what your qualifications actually mean and what that would open access to you for, and then start that process from there. Because until you ask and until you start sort of laying out your cards and saying, well, this is where I'm at, you would either get offered on a place in a course, which would be fantastic, or we can point you in the right direction in terms of a foundation course, or here's a nice little access course that you might consider for an application next year. So either way, it's win-win. You either get informed about the direction that you take from here, or we be able to provide you with your options that you have right now and today, which would be allow you to just gain that information that you need so you can make the best decision about your circumstances moving forwards, really. So.
And another thing is that we've got an open event on tomorrow between 10 till 4. So if any of these students that are unsure, you can always come down tomorrow and speak to some of the some of the academics, tutors, and have a campus tour tomorrow. But I've got one more final question for you. It's is there really anything that you'd like to add for students?
Yeah, I think universities are a really exciting time, and as I said, with regards to knowledge around what your options are, I think I would really encourage everybody who, if you're not sure, if you've not visited Bedford or Bedford or the Bedfordshire campuses, to really take the opportunity to just, have a dive in and see what the crack is. Because until you see the facilities, until you see and speak to a passionate member of staff, or gain a little bit of insight from a student ambassador who stood there, who's kind of been through the program for a few years, it's very difficult to make it tangible and real. And I think what Bedfordshire has to offer, particularly on the Bedford campus, is this kind of unique and tailored experience. So, you're not going to be coming into a lecture theatre with, 100, 200 students in there. Academics have a real nice opportunity to get to know who you are, find out what makes you tick, and find out what your career aspirations are moving forward, so that we can better advise you with regards to your options and your plans moving forward. When you come into a laboratory space like this, you're going to be stood with maybe 10 or 15 other people who are also passionate about your subject. And therefore, those lower student numbers, that better staff to student ratio, essentially improves the experience for you. You get more time with an academic, you get more opportunities to make close-knit friendships with individuals on campus, and it just rounds out that experience. If you're looking for a city centre experience, then some of the Luton offerings would be much better. So you've got the health sciences and the biochemistry programs, if you're interested in the sort of science elements of that. But a campus-based experience at Bedford is much more close-knit, it's quieter, it's more relaxed. There's much more opportunities to have meaningful engagements with staff members and with other students. So yeah, until you come down and have a look, or you pick up the phone, you're never going to know. So take the opportunity to do that, and you never know where it might lead you to.
Thank you. And if anyone does have any more questions after this, don't hesitate to get in touch. You can leave a comment down below with your questions, or there's a number up top, and there's also the website, www.beds.ac.uk/clearing. Thank you very much, Mike.
Excellent. Thanks very much for your time, guys. Cheers.